And welcome back to this Dialogue Web Extra. I'm Marcia Franklin. We've been talking with Lieutenant Colonel Victor Fehrenbach of Mountain Home Air Force Base. He was involved in the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal issue coming out and challenging that policy, which has now been repealed by the President and Congress, but is still on the books until it is certified by several individuals, including the President, as not harming military readiness, recruitment, and unit cohesion. We've got some calls holding on the line from our program, and you've been kind enough to stay and answer them. Let's talk to Chief in Idaho. Chief, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. First, I'd like to thank the Colonel for his service. Secondly, as a retired combat veteran, I would tell you that I would much rather deal and serve with a gay person than an alkie or a druggie, because I can at least trust the gay person.
And how many years did you serve in the military?
32 plus.
Wow.
And did you know when you were in the military that you were serving with gay people, or was it just a guess?
No, I knew some.
Okay, great. Thanks for your call.
Thanks for your service, Chief.
Thank
Thank you very much. Let's talk to Lawrence. Lawrence, thanks for holding in Idaho Falls. Lawrence, go ahead, please.
First of all, let me say thank you for your service, Lieutenant Colonel. I also was in the military, a combat veteran. I spent 8 years in the Army. And I served with gay people, lesbians, and, it never really did affect any the unit cohesion. But I do have a question about the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Mm-hmm.
All the service members that have been punished under UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, for being gay or lesbian that have gotten out with a general discharge, what are the chances of them having a class action lawsuit to get their benefits or getting their DD-214 upgraded to an honorable discharge?
Very interesting question. Let's hear his response.
They're actually, one of the lawsuits that was filed recently in the last few months did address that issue. So that's active, but I also I'm pretty sure that they are going to address those to upgrading those discharges, to changing the code. Basically, every Don't Ask, Don't Tell discharge had a code on it. It might have been honorable,
right,
but it had a code that said you can never join the military again.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to change all those codes. And I think, again, on a case-by-case basis, individuals that got a less than honorable will be able to appeal that and get that upgraded. But I know the code will be released.
And the report here indicates that they do not recommend back pay and all these things for time that was not served. But there's a little aside in here that if people want to challenge that, if they want to appeal that,
because
they can.
Yeah, there are others out there that got discharged about the point I was 18, and they were that close to retirement. And again, I'm sure that those will be on a case-by-case basis. If there are questions, the legal experts, I just want to again reiterate SLDN.org and the Service Members Legal Defense Network, and you can contact them because they've got all the correct legal answers.
Thanks so much, Lawrence, for your call. Let's take another call from Laura in Boise. Laura, go ahead, please.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your service, Lieutenant Colonel, and I also wanted to say we've been working for several years to get sexual orientation and gender identity included in the Human Rights Act, and it's failed every time, so we're working really hard to get that going now. And I wanted to say that someone like you standing up for our rights makes me proud to be an American, so thank you very much for your service and for being committed to this issue.
Thanks. Can I just address?
Thanks, Laura. Yes, he wants to address this issue.
I don't know the particulars of politics in Idaho per se, but if you look at history and at racial integration and gender equality, the military has always led society, in those issues. And so I think that with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, one of the side benefits that'll come from this is just general acceptance, is that over time, 5-10 years down the road, there will be sort of more of acceptance of gays in the workplace, just in society in general. And I think that it may be a matter of years, but keep fighting and those issues will be addressed. I think Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal will be a big part of that, just in increasing acceptance.
Thank you very much, Laura. I think she was also maybe seeing if you might speak out on that issue. You probably
I'd have to read up more on Idaho politics.
And let's see, Mike in Boise. Mike, go ahead, please.
Yes, I also was in the Air Force for 20 years, retired as a lieutenant colonel, and served with several gays over in Vietnam.
Could you speak up a little bit, Mike?
Yes, can you
There
hear
you
me
go.
better?
Oh,
There you
yeah,
go.
we can.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to congratulate the Lieutenant Colonel and the station for putting you on with this topic here. I noticed a couple of the callers said you chose your life, your sexual orientation. And I really don't believe that's true. I believe there's studies that show about 3 to 4 animal species other than humans have a normal distribution of homosexual behavior in their species. So I believe being homosexual is part of the normal distribution of behavior in humans and other species. And
Mike, did you serve with people in the military that you knew were gay?
I knew too, and I felt I was more interested in performance than anything else.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I was, well, I guess I'd put it hoping that you'd speak out about the non-choice issue.
You address that issue.
I agree with you. You know, after what I've been through in the last 2.5 years, trust me, I would never choose this, and I would never wish this upon anyone. So this is not a choice. In fact, if I grew up in Catholic schools my whole life. I went to Notre Dame. Everything I've ever learned from school, from church, from my family, from society, was that I was going to get married to a woman and have children and live in a house with a white picket fence. So if somebody wants to argue whether this is learned or not, well, I learned to be heterosexual in every part of society. So this is not learned. This has always been a part of me. It's just whether you come to the realization at the time.
Thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it, Mike. As we close, you mentioned in response to Laura's question that you think that that the military, as large as it is, and it was involved obviously in integration issues before the General Society was even, and then it had to deal with women coming into the military as well. Do you see this as the beginning, along with some of the other things that are happening in the country, of a change in civil rights for gays?
I do, and as I mentioned, you know, the military integrated racially in 1948. That was 1964, so almost 16 years before the Civil Rights Act. As far as gender equality issues, you know, there were female generals in the military in the 60s before there was ever a CEO of a corporation. So the military has always led the way. I think in this case we're a little behind society, as a matter of fact. I think the
report indicates, the
Right.
survey that was done by the military certainly indicates that.
Right. But I think what will happen here is we may be a little behind, but once this is fully implemented, it's going to accelerate change. It's going to accelerate rights. It'll accelerate marriage rights and adoption rights. And then one of the other effects I think it'll have, you know, the rash of teenage suicides in the fall, and there were just 2 last week, as a matter of fact. And I know a lot of people got involved in that issue, and that's where it actually hit me that all these issues were interrelated. What I think the effect will have is a lot of us got involved in what was called the It Gets Better Project and Trevor Project, trying to prevent gay teens from committing suicide. And just that phrase, "it gets better," you know, I did a video for it, and I told them everything I could that was heartfelt. It's probably the most important thing I think I've ever done. But you know, we kept using that phrase, "it gets better," and at the same time, the reality of the situation was, you might get fired from your job when you're an adult, you can't get married, you can't have children, you can't live the American dream. So the persecution that they see now, they don't see an end to it. You know, the reality was different than what we were promising. Well, Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, I can promise them, you know, they can join the military, and then in a few years, we'll continue to make these things better. We'll make them better. They're just not going to get better, and we owe it to them.
Do you have a sense of the process now of how long it's going to take to certify that Don't Ask, Don't Tell is not going to hurt military readiness? And then
I do. I have a sense, and this is just my personal opinion. No one actually knows because no timeline was built into the law.
Right.
But I do know this: the president said it'll be swift. And if I know anything from what I just saw the president do in the last year, he keeps his word. It'll be swift. Secretary Gates came out a couple weeks ago, and he said that the training for senior leaders will begin within weeks. So that timeline, he said, will be accelerated. So based on that, I feel the certification, what they need to do, obviously, is change some of the regulations, change some of the writing in the UCMJ. I believe a lot of that's already been done, so they're ready
And prepare for
regulatory
education.
changes. And the prepare for education, what that's going to be is most senior leaders and commanders. Well, that can be done within months. So if I had to guess, certification will occur sometime mid to late March, which means that 60-day mandatory implementation phase would be right about mid to late May, which actually would be perfect for recruiters because it opens a whole new pool of recruits for high school graduates to start recruiting in May.
You mean gay youth as well?
Absolutely.
People are very worried about that, you
Absolutely.
know. Some
No.
people are very worried that this is going to be a
they'll see, and they could use the
re-
UK as a model. They actually go to Pride events and they recruit actively there. So they're
and-
going to.
and people in the United States are worried that about that happening.
They're not going to be a lot of people waving flags. I'll tell you that much. I've got good friends that said, "Nothing's going to change here. I'm just going to stop lying every day." And in fact, if I wasn't outed, I probably, if this law just changed, I would do the same thing. I would always keep my private life private. It doesn't belong in the workplace.
That's what I was going to ask. The survey says up to maybe 15% of people might divulge
Right.
to their unit, but that even seemed high to me.
It does.
It seems like most people would keep that information to
Right.
themselves.
It'll be generally private. The big difference is that now gay service members can go to work with dignity, with their integrity, without living in fear, in silence, and without the threat of somebody just ending their career at any moment. So that's going to be the big change. And you know, General Amos talked about distractions. I lived with this distraction for 17 years. And there were times in combat this weighed on my mind for one reason or another. So yeah, this is distracting to have to think of the next lie. So that's going to be that's going to be the major change. You know, we're not going to see pride flags hanging out of barracks windows or anything like that. You're just not going to see that. Military people are professional, whether they're gay or straight. They just want to serve their country and do their job, and that's all they care about.
I wanted to ask you. You talk about this was on your mind even when you were in the jet. Were there tools that you learned in your training as a military officer that helped you get through this time period?
Absolutely, because you know there were that mission in Iraq that you mentioned. You know, we were trying
you got an air val, where you got a
yeah,
Valor
we were over
Award.
Baghdad. We were getting shot at by constant enemy air fire. When we landed, we counted. It was 6 or 8 different surface-to-air missile engagements, and I was trying to employ my weapons and my wingman's weapons because he had an aircraft malfunction all on this target array, all at the same time. So defending ourselves, trying to hit the target. So there were just, you know, you had to take one thing at a time. I had to defeat the missile, then I had to find the next target. Then there was AAA. You know, so you just take one thing at a time and move on to the next little step in the mission. So you don't really think about it, you know, the big picture until you land and you talk about it. And I've had time to reflect on this last 2.5 years and what it's meant. But you know, at the time, there were dark times when I just had to get through the next day or the next thing. When I went to my discharge board, I remember calling a friend and said, you know, I want to quit again. I don't think I can do this. I don't want to go in there. And it's essentially like a trial, you know, it's a witch trial where they prove you're a witch and you try to prove you're not, that you promise you won't do it again. And I said, you know, I don't want to relive all this. I don't want to hear this again. I don't want to relive, you know, the worst day of my life. And he said to me, you know, you've already lived the worst day of your life, so this is nothing. So I think with each little step along the way, you just take, again, each thing. It's in the fighter pilot world, we call it the OODA loop. Where you
The what?
The OODA loop, where you observe, you decide, and you act over and over again. So there's a new situation, you observe it, you make a decision, and you act on it. So again, each little phase, just took it one step at a time. And when you look at the big picture, I suppose it makes someone look strong, but I don't know if that's the case all the time.
Well, I asked you in the program what you learned about yourself. As we close here, we've got some pictures of you with President Obama, with you with Ms. Pelosi. I want to ask you what you think that you learned about the American system going through this. You were at some pretty big events, pretty big changes in time, and here you are with.
With Major Mike Coleman, we went to high school together.
Yeah.
He was discharged 5 years ago, so he'll get to come back in the Air Force.
And Ms. Pelosi, you're
I
looking
was,
up there at the crowd.
I was
So
trying to get her to sign faster.
And then
Yes,
again at
holding
the
bell.
very
It's
end,
great.
and this is
This,
President Obama giving you a hug.
giving a
You can't
big hug.
you can't really tell, and then here he is. So looking back at me here, tell me a little bit about because it sounds like you lost faith at certain times, both in the
I did.
military and in our democratic system, and yet at the end.
It was a roller coaster. You know, there were times where, like you said, the State of the Union address. You know, I got my hopes up, and then you know, nothing happened for several months. I heard Admiral Mullen's testimony. I got my hopes up, and again, nothing would happen for several months. It passed in the House, and the Senate delayed, and then the Senate had parliamentary procedures. So there were just times where you just kept going up and down, and I did lose faith. I mean, that time I was serious about it. And when I wrote my friend and said this was the first time I had lost faith. But at the end of the day, the thing I lost faith in, you know, the people that did believe this was the right thing to do, they did do it. And I'll tell you, the president ran on hope, you know, and it was a campaign slogan. But I think when he signed that bill into law, he made hope a reality for a lot of people, for millions of people actually. And when he looked me in the eye when I went to the White House, he looked me in the eye and he said, "We'll get this done." I personally thought, okay, sure, that's just something he's saying to me. I don't know if he really believes it, but he did believe it, obviously. And that last picture where he was looking me in the eye again, he said it just as he did when he signed the bill. He said, "This is done, we did it." He had confidence the entire way through. He had a plan. And there really was no reason to have faith. And
Not to have faith, you mean?
Right. To lose faith. Like I said before, if he gives his word, he's going to keep it. I'm sure of that.
All right. Well, thank you for taking this extra time to talk with us on the Dialogue Web Extra and answer the phone calls as well. You've been listening to Lieutenant Colonel Victor Fehrenbach of Mountain Home Air Force Base. I'm Marcia Franklin, and thanks for tuning in to this Dialogue Web Extra.